So that stated, I am now calling the Children's Guild Public Charter School meeting to order. It is 6:07 p.m. on Monday, October 4th, 2021. Start with some opening comments, public comments. First of all, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Congratulations to anyone who is a survivor or is related to someone who's a survivor or knows anyone that has been a survivor of breast cancer. I personally have not, knock on wood, so far. So, I just want to recognize that. Also, earlier last week, I participated in the DC Open Meetings Act compliance webinar. Lots of interesting things were talked about in that meeting. I don't know if anyone else had a chance to kind of jump on that, but they did send me a link for a replay of the webinar. If anyone is interested in viewing that, I can send it and have that made available. They've also offered to provide a one-on-one kind of counseling for our board, and I can set up that meeting, if we're interested in doing that, because there are some things that I think that they pointed out that I know that we're not necessarily doing, but there's some workarounds around those things too. So that they mentioned. So we might want to make sure that we follow up with them for the next board meeting. And then finally, this Saturday is the last opportunity to visit the open house for the Children's Guild Transformation Academy in Baltimore. I'm not sure if any of you all or all of you all have heard about that. I plan to make a trip up there. It's from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. is when they're having it. This is the final one of 3 that they've had. They had 2 last week, and then this Saturday will be the last one. So I encourage anyone to go out there and check that out when you get a chance. All right, so I will, I guess, move to the principal's report, since I don't think we have a quorum to vote on the approval of the minutes. So that stated, Dr. Daniels, if you would please provide the principal's report.
Always enjoy coming to this meeting to get Dr. Jackson status, and I'll take it every chance I get without having to go to actually get that doctorate. So Dr. Daniels is here, and we are going to do what we do. It is always good to be here with you all, and I am just pleased to just let you know that I am so excited just about this new senior leadership team that is on board with us this year, and they are all taking an active role in putting together these board reports. So you don't always have to just hear, my boring voice over and over again. So this is going to be a shared experience today, where each member of the team is going to report out something different for you. And once they complete their portion, they'll stop and ask if there are any questions, and we'll continue to move on. So Elise, if you could share the PowerPoint, that would be awesome. And we're going to start off right into the elementary report that is going to be brought to you by AP Medley.
Good evening, everyone. And so I wanted to start by sharing with everyone our framework that we use for our reading block, which is 120 minutes. And for K-2, we do phonological awareness, phonics, reading, research, and writing. And we're going to start guided reading in November once we are done with the TRC testing, which is part of the DIVLS testing. TRC stands for text reading comprehension. And for our 3rd and 4th grade classes, the instructional framework looks as follows: reading, research, writing, and guided reading. That is also slated to begin in October. For our math instructional framework, we use their Eureka components, which are fluency, application problem, the concept development, problem set, a debrief, and an exit ticket. And that is, again, K to 4, 90 minutes each day, except on Wednesdays, which is our intervention day. So our iReady window has officially closed, and our DIBBLS window opened up last week. DIBBLS stands for Dynamic Indicators of Beginning Early Literacy skills, and we're using that coupled with iReady to really inform our instruction. And it tests the 5 buckets of reading: decoding, phonics, phonological awareness, comprehension, fluency. And that is going to close on October 22nd. So we're in the midst of testing. We're testing all K to 4 students, Gen Ed and SPED. And the TRC window will open next week, which will provide us some great data for comprehension. And that will also close on October 22nd. So we have had 5 positive COVID cases within the past 3 weeks, and we followed all of the directives with reporting, sharing information with parents, reporting to the charter board, and also reporting all the cases out to Department of Health. 3 students were in 6th grade, all were in separate classrooms. We had 1 4th grade student and we had 1 3rd grade student. 15 students were quarantined due to direct exposure at our school, and 5 staff members, and 6 students were required to quarantine due to direct exposure on our school bus. So I wanted to share really quickly some iReady results and talk about the shifts that we're going to be making as we close out, as we approach the midpoint of the quarter. So as you can see here, these are the results of the iReady ELA. Traditionally, our school has always fared better in math, but as you will see, our students performed actually K to 8 slightly better in ELA this year. And at the bottom, I just reminded that we have a target of 60% growth in ELA for our iReady goals for growth and 30% stretch. And I'm going to talk a little more about this later on, but I wanted you to see the overall results for iReady for ELA. Next slide, please. And then these are the overall results for math. So you can see that we did slightly better with students who were either on grade level or approaching grade level, or we had a few students who were above grade level in reading when compared to math. And we have the exact same goals with 60% growth for math and 30% stretch. Next slide, please. So based upon the data that we collected with math, we decided to make some instructional shifts to close these gaps. As you can see, the red here indicates that our students really need some intensive supports for the 4 math domains here. So we're going to implement a guided math approach, which is the same approach that we would use with our reading block with guided reading, in which we're going to focus on the skill, and we're going to do a deep data analysis bi-weekly with using the relay data protocol. And teachers will embed the daily exit ticket in with the lesson plan to make sure that we are working with the backwards map and plan in mind. So that is tracked every Sunday. Lesson plans are due, and the coaches and I have a chance to go through and observe the lessons and provide feedback. And that tracker is shared with the senior leadership team, and all of us kind of have access to what the data is saying to us. For ELA, I want to start with kindergarten. We are right on target. As you can see, none of our kindergartners are below grade level. We don't have any self-contained kindergarten students, identified just yet. So the results here are from our Gen Ed class. And so we're going to continue to monitor fidelity of our Tier 1 instruction of iReady, which is our phonemic awareness, intervention, and foundations, which is, depending on how we use it, for kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grades, we're going to use it as a preventative measure, but for 3rd and 4th grade, it's going to be a Tier 2 instruction. And we're going to progress monitor using our dibbles. That will happen twice a month for students who are below and once a month for students who are yellow. Next slide. First grade, same thing. We're going to continue to monitor fidelity of Tier 1 instruction of iReady and foundations. We're going to monitor our SPED students as a bulk of the red here reflected them. We're going to embed our Lexia intervention as one of our station rotations. And again, these students will also be progress monitored. Next slide. So our second grade data was really strange because it showed that our kids did not fare well with phonological awareness and phonics. Next slide. So what we're going to do, a shift that we're going to make, you can go to the next slide, please, is we're going to add the phonological awareness to the reading block. That was only scheduled for K and 1, but we recognize there has to be a shift with that because our kids can't hear the sounds and they don't know letters or graphemes, right? So when we teach phonics, we teach kids that letters have a sound, which is its phoneme, and that letters have a print representation, which is the grapheme. So we're going to intensely monitor our phonics instruction. We're now using foundations as a Tier 1 intervention for all of our kids in K-2, and we're going to monitor their SPED students. And when we start guided reading in November, it's going to be an intensive needs-based group based upon the data we've collected from iReady and from DIBELS. Those students who are behind in this data here, reflected here, will also have access to Lexia as part of the blended learning, one of the blended learning rotations in our literacy block. Next slide for third grade. So third grade was quite interesting. We noticed that our third graders did not do well with phonics. So this shows that our third graders don't know their letter identification, but they are okay with rhyming words. But what's interesting is that they score pretty well with high frequency words, which suggests to me that if students don't do well with phonics, but they have a pretty good score in high frequency words, that our system of teaching high frequency words has been flawed. This tells me that students were taught to memorize high frequency words because we teach sight words as words that we know by sight. And the shift that we're making is that I'm having teachers to teach how sight words can be decoded, right? Not every sight word can be decoded 100%, but there is definitely a part that can be decoded, and we're going to teach that to all of our students so that they can use that skill when they are trying to decode unfamiliar words. So that is a shift that we are doing with our plan. Third grade. So we're going to add phonics instruction. I'm sorry, I can go back one. We're going to add phonics instruction to our reading block for third grade. That was not part of our rollout for reading. We're going to ensure that our third graders have exposure to 50% literary and informational texts, and we're going to continue to monitor SPED students and do the guided reading needs-based group and then embed Lexia. Fourth grade is, next slide, basically the same thing. We noticed the same thing, that our kids didn't do well with phonics, but had a really good grasp of high frequency words. So the exact same approach. We're going to add phonics instruction to our reading block. We're going to ensure that students are exposed to 50% literary text and 50% informational text based upon what the data is showing here. Lastly, our culture of achievement, we set a goal to increase our attendance rate from 72% to 85%, and we would like to decrease our chronic absenteeism by 10%. We are going to have monthly attendance ceremonies. Our very first one is going to be next week, and it will be for elementary and middle school. So we're going to recognize everyone via Zoom. And then afterwards, students will receive certificates, and they're going to have either popsicles or popcorn with the principals. We haven't decided which one, just to recognize them. Our monthly PBIS celebration for October coming up is going to be our fall festival parade. And then finally, our quarterly award ceremonies for academic achievement, citizenship, and most improved attendance will happen in November. So one breath with the elementary report. I'd like to pause now and ask to open up the floor, any questions that anyone may have. I know I ran through that really quickly.
I just want to thank you for the COVID slide save, because that was supposed to be towards the end of the PowerPoint, but as I said, this team just kind of flows in their functions, and he just picked it up even though it wasn't one of his slides. So thank you for just not missing a beat.
So now I'll turn it over to AP Johnson, who will give the middle school report.
Good evening, guys. Happy Wednesday. Hope everybody's having a great day. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. All right, so these are our 2021-2022 overall goals that I went over last board meeting. So our academic goals are the same. 60% of our students will meet their projected goal in both ELA and math, with 30% of that reaching their stretch goal in an effort to close that gap around grade level equivalency. Our instructional foci include a focus on grade level priority standards, skills-based intervention, and small group instruction 2 to 3 times weekly, weekly standards, mastery tracking, and weekly data planning, and bi-weekly short cycle assessments, which is every 2 weeks. In addition, our cultural and attendance goals were to increase the average overall attendance rate by 10%, to facilitate 3 to 4 academic recognition ceremonies, and to facilitate 5 to 6 behavior incentives. So the next slides will walk you through the status of those today. So we also took the iReady window. Our window was open September 1st to September 20th is when we concluded at the middle school. And here are our ELA results by grade band. So if you look, I provided a key for you so that you understand what the categories are: phonological awareness, phonics, high frequency words, vocabulary comprehension, and literature. And as you can see, I am very, very happy that nobody in 5 through 8 needs instruction in phonological awareness. That makes me happy because those are foundational skills. So I'm glad to know that our children have them. However, as you go across 5th grade, you will see that we also struggle in phonics, especially in that 5th grade, as well as a cohort. We have a focus on comprehension of literary and informational text. So why they are coded, anything that is circled in green are things that are already addressed in the 5th through 8th grade curriculum and that are already planned for through daily instruction and small group instruction. Things in the yellow are things we're going to target through our tier 2 instruction, which is our Lexi, our ST Math, and our rotations on Wednesdays. And then the things in red are things going to be intensively targeted through those programs, as well as through small group instruction and tutoring. So if you look, we will have an intensive focus on phonics, which is why we have Lexi in place for 5 through 8, and high frequency words and vocabulary skills. We are going to funnel in our instruction as we have moved to a novel study-based instructional model for 5 through 8. So using a novel as a guide to the standard versus just reading text. You can go to the next slide. So here we go. The steps we've taken in reading intervention based on this data. The iReady data review and action plan was finalized by all teachers 5 through 8 by September 24th. So we began their small group instruction by domain and standard. It began on October the 1st. 5 through 8th grade classes, as I just spoke, use a novel study protocol for ELA. So each class reads 1 to 2 novels per quarter, and we engage in a novel study and teach the priority standards and application through the study of the novel. Teachers are also engaged in a weekly data protocol meeting to ensure that they're aligned to the novel study protocol. And the short cycle assessments are pushed down by myself. So all bi-weekly short cycles are our additional data point for standards mastery over time for priority standards, because that is the data point that iReady does not give us. It gives us growth goals and it gives us grade level equivalency, but not necessarily a measure of grade level standards mastery over time. Lexia auto placement begins next week for students of need. So that would be those students that need that phonics and phonemic awareness. And in the math slide, I'll explain why we chose to move with math intervention first. The first bi-weekly short cycle assessment for ELA is this Thursday. The following is October 22nd, and then end of quarter assessments happen the final week of the quarter. And that serves as our 3rd data point, and it falls in line with the bi-weekly assessment cycle for ELA. Math data. So if you can see, our math data is quite different. We have a trend of all of our students in grades 5 through 8 struggling in foundational skills of number and operations, which is something that we absolutely need to feel in order for them to be able to access and computate on grade level. So we will concentrate on number sense, Measurement data and geometry are already things that are included in the 5 through 8 curriculum, and algebra and algebraic thinking, they will get through that intensive, well, not through that intensive intervention, through that small group intervention. We can go to the next slide. So in response to the math data, outside of the iReady intervention plans and the small group instruction, we started the ST math diagnostic immediately after getting that math iReady data, and we completed that diagnostic on September 29th. So the targeted tier 2 and tier 3 groups for math intervention, started this week because we have so many children that are struggling in foundational math skills. Their biweekly short cycle assessment cycles are the same as ELA, as well as for the end of quarter assessments. But we decided to take an intentional and early focus on math because majority of the population is struggling in foundational math skills, which is a shift from our historic data. Next slide. And last but not least, our culture and attendance goals. So my teachers have been doing weekly attendance check-ins and tracking on Wednesday. So some of their time is dedicated to reaching out to any children that they haven't seen, seeing if parents need assistance, seeing what we can do to get those children in the building or in seat. To date, we've successfully re-entered 6 children in grades 6 through 8 through that weekly protocol. One was a family of 4, and then we were able to re-enter 2 individual children. Our first quarter academic awards assembly is Wednesday, November the 10th. We will do it during our advisory time on Wednesday during that SEL time. We would do an online first quarter awards assembly. In addition, we begin a weekly behavior incentive plan using dojo points as a way to track behavior. Student goal is to achieve 20 points daily or 100 points a week, with the goal of having 325 points by the end of the month to participate in the monthly incentives. So it allows them time to really, really work their way up and not have a perfect month. For the month of October, we're having a monster bash, November, popcorn and a movie, and December, a pizza glow party. Any questions?
I don't know if y'all can see my heart just kind of fluttering through the screen. That my goal for this program is for us to be able to change the narrative. And the way for us to be able to change the narrative is to do what these 2 amazing educators have just laid out for you all, which is to make sure that our name is synonymous with rigor and instruction. This is going to be the way that we reopen the doors to a different and a new population of students. We still are going to get the kids that we get. Our kids are still gonna, come through on the next couple of slides because Dr. Jackson's amazing at running our SPED program. But if we continue to build kids' ability to access curriculum, to become stronger readers, to become more fluent in their mathematical skills, we are now creating a different name and a narrative for who the Children's Guild is for the District of Columbia. And I just wanted to stop and just recognize the awesome work that is going on instructionally because of these 2 phenomenal educators. So thank you. And are there any questions for either of the APs?
I do have a question. So when we, I guess, to measure our success, are we going to be trying to measure it against what we've done in the school with our kids? Or are we going to try to measure it against what is happening in other schools? What is our main, I guess, focus on how we're going to try to measure success?
We are externally measured by 50% of our students meeting their targeted growth goal for iReady, which is why this BOY is so essential, because their growth goals are set on this. So externally, our measure is 50% of our children meeting their goal. Internally, we tried to push that up by 10% so that we are closing gaps faster, as well as adding an internal goal of the stretch goal, which allows them to reach grade level equivalency faster. But our external goal is for 50% of our population to reach their stretch goal by the end of the year assessment window in May.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And so what the external goals, we have a charter with the DC Public Charter Board, and our renewal and continued existence in the DC Charter Network is contingent upon us hitting those goals. So there are academic goals, then there's some survey goals, there's financial goals, enrollment goals, and so on, that we're all kind of were measured by. But then I think Ms. Johnson thoroughly answered the internal question as well.
So I think, so I come, from football background, being competitive or whatever. Is there a school that is a benchmark that we want to compare ourselves to, I guess, in that regard?
We're very unique in the DC charter portfolio, honestly, Mr. Seabrooks. We're the only school who's chartered to have 50% of our students with disabilities. So we're in an alternative accountability framework as a result. So there's very few schools and no other elementary school in the District of Columbia who's doing what we're doing. So the DC Charter Board, in their reauthorization in December of 2019, acknowledged that and altered our goals away from some of the traditional metrics that are generally other schools are held accountable to, namely the state assessment tool known as PARC. And so, as a result, we have very individualized goals to move our students forward from where we get them. Then when they spend a year with us, 2 years, 3 years, the expectation from DC Charter Board is we are growing them.
So to kind of piggyback that, so our ultimate goal, along with hitting, our targeted public charter board goals for the iReady are going to be eventually to extend our learning and to be able, we're going to end up taking the state assessment, which is the PARC again, that doesn't come around until April of this April and this spring. And no, we are not going to be held accountable for the results, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to aim to achieve high. And so we will end up getting results that are going to be comparable to other schools that are in the public charter world, that are in the regular DCPS world, and we'll be able to see where we're stacking up, even though we're not responsible for a certain level of achievement. Again, in order to change the narrative, we are still going to strive for high levels of academic growth and hopefully closing these extremely large deficiencies and gaps that we have compared against some of the the more traditional and older schools in the public charter school network. So it is an alternative accountability framework, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to push to hit a lot of the targets that some of our other charter schools are hitting, so that we can again start raising our STAR framework score and our report card grade, so that again, it makes us look more marketable as an entire school and not just a school that focuses on students with special needs.
And I'll just to add to that, you'll see later in the agenda when we talk about our enrollment that we're very heavily middle school. Even though we're a K-8, our elementary grades are extremely small. And so what that means is many kids come to us in middle school because they've been largely unsuccessful in their K-5 experience throughout either other charter schools or in the District of Columbia. And so we often inherit students with significant deficits in both literacy and mathematics. And so that's why the DC Charter Board was supportive of us, like choosing growth goals, because we didn't create the deficits, we're remediating them and accelerating learning, as I think Ms. Johnson and Mr. Medley both alluded to. Thank you.
There still may be, and I don't want to take too much time on it, but there still may be an opportunity to just pick a school and just, even though we're not going to be on the same type of expectations, especially on the accountability level, but we just assume that we are, and we just pick that school to measure up against them. I don't know if that's something that's workable, but maybe that's something to think about.
No, it's
And just-
definitely something that we can add to just one of our internal working goals in terms of our school improvement plan. I can remember having a conversation with Ms. Giles around a top tier performing school that's also in Northeast, that's also in a warehouse district such as ourselves, and they have just been a school that has they've made determinations that we haven't to control their population and dictate who they allow in their building. And, they specifically target certain types of students, which allows them to achieve at a higher rate. Now, if we're able to select a school such as this, and again, begin to achieve at this high rate, and not doing what they did in terms of not addressing students that we get that are struggling, that are 2 years behind, but we embrace that and we still help them to achieve and to close that gap, then we again, I think we will have then achieved what it is that you're kind of looking towards. Like, let's give ourselves a target, and let's go for it, kind of with our gusto, and you never know what we'll be able to achieve once we kind of set our minds to it. Dr. Jackson, you want to give us some SPED information?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. I think I would concur to everything that has been shared, and I'm excited to share some SPED numbers. I just wanted to I always feel like this is one of the greatest departments that we have at the Children's Guild. It helps me to remember that to give anything less than our best is to sacrifice the gift. And so in this department, we really don't ever sacrifice the gift, because we really try to give our students the very best, and teaching them that anything less than that would be sacrificing the gifts that they are to us. So with that being said, we're going to get right into our SPED levels. And so in order for us to identify how we are to service our students and their needs appropriately, we have SPED levels that help us to understand the continuum of special education services. So students that are typically a level 1 student receive anywhere from 0.8 hours of service all the way to 8 hours of service, and to about 10 hours of service. And then it continues in that progression. Level 4 will be our most intense program that we offer to our students, which we identify as a self-contained program, where our students receive all of their educational programming taught by a special educator, with the support of a TA to help assist. And as AP Johnson and AP Medley indicated, that the great work that they've done is also helps us to identify where we need to fill the academic gaps for our students with disabilities, to ensure that where we have them close to the continuum now really reaches their least restricted environment, to give them an opportunity to be academically successful. With that being said, we do have some potential new level 4 students that, based on the data that was just presented from AP Medley and AP Johnson, that helps us to identify, and as Kathy articulated earlier, that sometimes we inherit these things, but without data, we're unable to move students effectively. So with our data being presented, we do have about 10 potential students that will move to a level 4, requiring just a more structured, tiered intervention that really will be utilized within the self-contained classrooms to help them reach their educational gaps, and so that we can see those milestones move for them educationally. Next is about our related services, which is an intricate part of our team. Related services provide an opportunity for our students to access the curriculum at its greatest level. And so we have broken this down into how many hours or minutes per month that we service these students. We have our OT, which currently we have one now, Ms. Halamaskow, who is providing services. We do have a vacancy. However, we have reached out to an agency that is providing us with filling that vacancy for occupational therapy. Our speech and language pathologist, Ms. Alexander, has 2 interns that have been helping to fill those hours in. We have our audiologist who provides services, and at the bottom just tallied the amount of services per minutes per month that we provide to our students to ensure that they're getting that. Any questions for SPED? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
I'm sorry, I think Daniels was trying to say something, but he's
I
on.
was
Okay,
just
go ahead.
Miss Carter, go ahead. The mute was on because it's time for me to be quiet.
Good evening, everyone. I apologize. I'm in my car. I'm doing double duty, cheer mom, cheer coach on a Monday night. All right, next slide. All right, so as of today, this is our current enrollment. As you can see, for first grade, we have 12 students. Second grade, we have 16. Third, we have 14. 4 and 32. For fifth grade, we have 21. Sixth grade, we have 39. Seventh grade, we have 26. And eighth grade, we have 55, with a kindergarten class of 5, with a grand total of 220 students. Next slide. For our attendance rate, in August consisted of just 2 days, of the 30th and the 31st. We had 68.62% percentage rate for attendance, and for September, we had 71.38. But again, as AP Medley mentioned earlier, we were affected by those students with our COVID cases coming in contact, students not being able to attend. And I think that wraps me up. Any questions?
Yeah, and so before we kind of dive into the needs and the assistance, just wanted to say that overall we are looking to achieve that over 85% of attendance rate per month. We have heard from a lot of parents over the last couple of weeks, and students that we hadn't heard from since last school year, which is a good thing. We're also battling issues with students and immunizations, which also affects our attendance rate, because parents are still trying to get their kids in to get their regular immunizations, and not even talking about a COVID vaccination. And one of the things that I did want to also make reference to, and AP Johnson reminded me of it, was I think, and we discussed this, was around the Mr. Seabrooks. There's a school called Digital Pioneers that really is a very, very similar population of students to ours, and they offer a one-to-one and an internet-based program, which we are also looking to develop as a school, and they are running a highly effective program that is scoring well, whether it be through their standardized testing, or whether it be through their internal norms of achievement for their students. And they are also one of 11 other schools that has also been identified as an at-risk preference school, which is going to be something new for us in the upcoming school year. Now that we have this at-risk preference, it allows us to create seats and to get kids that are and families that are actually funneled to us, because they know that we provide a specific type of population that is going to help to meet the needs of the students that they have, and we're going to provide the type of environment that is going to be beneficial to them. So just thank you everybody for all of the wonderful reports. Are there any questions about the report before we have a list of asks that for the board, if you all have any connections or community connections or access to any of these materials. Elise, if you could pop back onto the board report. So just some things that we are still trying to support our families, to make sure that kids are they have clean, and they have several uniforms that they have the opportunity to choose from. We have kind of exhausted our resources specifically for our middle school kids, and those larger and those adult sizes. Of course, getting ready to winterize them, and having things to be able to present and to support families in terms of socks, hats, scarves, thermal undergarments. We are partnering with 2 other schools in the area for a coat drive, and we are looking to be able to make sure that we provide a good percentage of the coats to be a part of the drive. As always, we are going to be looking to put together some family food baskets, whether it be for Thanksgiving or the winter holiday, and then just assistance for our staff inside of the building. We can never get enough, Lysol wipes, hand sanitizer, and disinfectant. Just those regular, just water bottles that we could potentially give out to either staff or students, as they're always looking to, just to keep themselves hydrated. And then just a couple of instructional items, such as composition books, loose leaf paper, 1-inch binders. We are looking to really get our kids focused around tracking and keeping their own data. And so a lot of our middle school kids are going to be required to data track their own information by using these 1-inch binders. That will be a great resource to our students and our staff, and as well as our parents, because it'll be something that they'll be able to tap into. That's kind of hard. A lot of our parents still kind of struggle with being able to navigate the Google Classrooms and the report cards and things like that from a technological standpoint. But if kids are bringing home, just binders full of that's like a portfolio now every quarter for them, saying this is how I'm doing in school, it's just much more tangible for parents, and they just seem to have a much better understanding of that and how to read it. So these are just some potential supports that we would just kind of look to you all to be able to support. As AP Medley said, that we are looking to have our fall festival that will be coming up. We're looking to really create our own pumpkin patch out in the back of the school, so we don't have to venture out to a pumpkin patch in the area. So also, if you have any resources where we can get some miniature pumpkins and things that kids can go through, if you have access to some hay bales or whatever the case may be, we're taking all support to be able to kind of just create these good spaces where our kids can kind of still get out, be safe, and we don't have to worry about commingling with too many kids, because as you all know, the numbers continue to rise, specifically around our babies in elementary school that are underneath the age of 12 and don't have the ability to receive a vaccination yet. So that was an extended report from the principal side, but again, just wanted to make sure that you all know that we are really looking to make a strong shift around what it is, how it is, and how we're delivering our instructional program this year, because this is really going to be the change in the narrative that we're looking to do. So thank you all for listening.
Good job, team. That was an excellent report. Appreciate all the information and all the work that you all have put into creating those reports and getting that information to us. Just great job. With that stated, we will move to Mr. Gordon for the financial status report.
Good evening. So we have two sets of financials to look at this evening. One is the final wrap up of last fiscal year, so our June 30 numbers. And then we'll run through our most recent available, which is August 31. And so I'm going to try and do this quickly because it's a lot of information and double the information of our usual conversation. So looking at the financials, the profit and loss, or the revenue expenditure statements for year end, revenues are 1.65 million behind budget and 1.8 million behind last year to date. Personnel costs are slightly over 1 million below budget and $500,000 below last year to date, which is a good trend. Total operating expenses are almost $2 million below budget, making up for the revenue shortfall. They're also 1.275 million below prior year to date. Our change in total net assets is running $582,000 to the good against budget and showing $163,000 better than last year. Our fundraising and grants are running $244,000 ahead of budget and $474,000 ahead of prior year. This is a pretty good starting point to move into the new fiscal year. I'm going to move on to the balance sheets now, and we'll talk about cash as of the balance sheet date is $58,000 higher than it was a year ago at the end of the year. And our cash balance this morning was slightly over $3.5 million. So again, we've got cash sitting in the bank and it's a pretty good place to be. Our total current assets are $519,000 higher than they were a year ago. And this is mostly due to an increase in cash balance and the accounts receivable increasing, which turns into collections a month later. Total assets have increased $250,000 since the last reporting, mostly related to an increase in the accounts receivable on the balance sheet date. Our intercompany payables have been reduced by 75 grand versus the prior year to date. And our total net assets have increased about $615,000 over the prior year to date. I'll now talk about the third sheet, and that is the ratio analysis. Again, this is the ratio analysis of DC Public Charter School Board reviews. So our change in net assets is doing okay. It's a change, but it's mostly due to timing. We're still above that dangerous -5% where the board looks askance at it. Our aggregated net margin decreased from prior reporting period, and we're now above a 1.5, which is an issue with the city, with the board. Our days of cash on hand have increased, and so that's a good trend. Our cash flow from operations margin has dropped from 3% last reporting period to 0.03%. It's still above zero, so we're okay there. Our current ratio has increased from 2.6% to 2.9 this reporting period. It's a positive trend, and both of those figures were well above the 1-to-1 that DC requires. Our debt ratio dropped from 0.79 to 0.72, which means we're moving in the right direction, so that's good. Our primary reserve ratio has increased from 0.121 to 0.197. So we're moving in the right direction. Again, the city is looking for 0.25. So we're on our way in the right direction, getting pretty close. Our program service expense ratio increased slightly from the prior period. It's still really good at 94%. Our defensive ratio increased from 2.19 to 3.18 months on hand, so that's a good trend. And our liquidity ratio increased from 0.47 to 0.63. This is reflective of stronger cash reserves as just described. That's the information on how we closed out the year. Pretty good looks, given the challenging year we went through with COVID. We did pretty good at a bottom line. Now we're going to move into talking about how we're doing this fiscal year. So again, this is as of August 31st figures. Our revenues are $500,000 behind budget and also $400,000 behind last year to date. This is a summer related figure. They're always smaller numbers. It's the extended school year enrollment. We had projected 92 students, and in fact, we had 33 students. So that's the offset. However, with enrollment moving into the regular school year and the day programs and the SPED program, we should see market improvement over prior year. Our personnel costs are about $82,000 above budget and $48,000 above last year to date. Our total operating expenses are $182,000 above budget and $130,000 above prior year to date. This is mainly driven by that increase in staffing, as well as some building supplies that we needed to use during the 2 months of the summer. Our change in total net assets is running $620,000 below budget and $19,000 behind last year to date. Again, we think we'll be catching up. Fundraising grants are running $67,000 ahead of budget and $500,000 ahead of the prior year to date. We believe we can make up a bit of this gap with some ESSER grants as we move through the year. So while the numbers are a little challenging to look at today, they're a timing issue, and we expect them to self-correct over the coming months. I'm going to move on to the balance sheet now. Our cash balance is $1.4 million lower than it was a year ago at the end of August. This is a timing issue. Again, we have $3.5 million in the bank today, so that number pretty consistent. We had excess cash, and that was a timing of when we drew down against management fees last year. So that's the disparity there, but we're still pretty good. Our total current assets are $20,000 higher than they were last year, prior year to date. And that's driven by an increase in receivables. It's, again, a timing issue. Our total assets have decreased $255,000 versus prior year to date, but it's mainly related to depreciation, which is a non-cash expense. So it's just, it's a quirk of balance sheets and depreciation. Our intercompany payables are up $60,000 over prior year to date. And our total net assets have increased about $597,000 over last year. So again, that is positive. With that, I'll move into the ratios. On the ratios, we'll see a change in net asset margin. It's declined from the last reporting period. This is due to last year, we had $113,000 of profit versus a current period loss of $416,000. Again, it's a timing issue and it has to do with the enrollment. Our aggregated net margin improved over prior year reporting period. Our days of cash on hand, but they're both well over 45 days required by DC. We're at 981 days. It's a very comfortable number. Cash flow from operations to drop from 13% last year to negative 33%. It's due to the way we calculate it, and it's based on the current loss, which again, we believe will improve over the timing of the year. Our current ratio dropped from 4.8 to 4.16. It's still well above 1.1, which is what is ideal. So we're okay there. Our debt ratio dropped from 0.87 to 0.81, which is a good trend. Our primary reserve ratio increased from 1.11 to 1.42, which is well above the 0.25 desired by the city, and we're moving in the right direction. Our program service expense ratio increased. This is a good thing. It went from 88% to 90%, so it's moving in the right direction. Our defensive ratio had a slight decrease, but again, we went from 7.78 months on hand to 7.16 months on hand. It's still a very comfortable position to be in. And our liquidity ratio has actually increased from 0.65 to 0.74. It's moving in the right direction, and that's because our debt has been reduced. That is a very long-winded way to tell you that we're moving along. Are there questions?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Just one quick question. So of the areas where we do have a little bit of concern, where we may be falling behind, what are some things that we should be looking for?
Well, so part of this is driven by our enrollment levels, and the measurement date is actually tomorrow. And so we will be looking at where we are in our budgets based against the enrollment, based against the budget enrollment, and making some adjustments to the budget moving forward. That's the first corrective action we'll be doing. We're also going to be looking again at what's available in the way of grants that weren't originally contemplated in our budget for the year that we may in turn use. So there's some opportunities there. And then we're looking at how do we grow enrollment and how we do better with our marketing. So we're looking at a number of operating areas. And again, it's based on having the known enrollment versus what we had projected for enrollment. So while some of the numbers are a little bit alarming, they are correctable, and we are taking actions working with the team to correct them.
Hi, this is Marie. Charlie, I think maybe in answering Rob's question, you're answering my question as well. But I guess just maybe a little bit more specifically for the areas where we're not meeting the metrics, where the DC government is expecting us to have a certain level or range. Are those the types of things that you're referring to as correctable? I mean, what are the ramifications? You said the measurement date is tomorrow, so if we don't meet the metric, what happens?
Right. So that's for the enrollment. And so that enrollment drives revenue. And so revenue drives our bottom line. And because of the way some of these ratios are calculated, they include what would be in a business world profits or what would be revenue numbers. And they move period to period. So you do a look back period of 12 months or 3 years, every month, that look back period is going to have a different set of results. And so we just happen to be at a point in time at the end of August where things weren't great, but moving forward, the things are looking up. And so those components, those variables within those ratios will be improving. So we're moving in the right direction. And then by taking corrective actions to right size some of the expenditures to the current enrollment level, we should be getting to a place where all those variables come together to make the ratios work properly.
So when is that reporting then to the DC government where they're measuring against what they're expecting our metrics to be or our ratios to be at versus where they are at?
So we report all kinds of things on a monthly basis to DC. And so they look at them on a monthly basis and there are questions and we have conversations about them.
Okay. So are there any that are more critical? I guess I'm just trying to understand if they're expecting our metric to be a certain, range or hit a certain number, what time period do we have to correct it before it becomes a more critical or significant issue?
Well, there are certain levels where we do need to announce certain types of adjustments. We're not there yet, but also all of these ratios are taken as a whole and not one as a piece. So we're painting a larger picture and we can point to 2/3 of them saying, look how great this is. And this is an anomaly based on the story we're telling you, and things will adjust with timing. And they do the same kind of math that our finance department does. So they understand those kind of conversations.
Okay, so just to kind of rephrase, I think what I hear you saying is although we may be out of line of expectations in certain areas, we're having good collegial conversations and you're not concerned with the position that's putting us in, at least at this time.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. but you're not saying that there isn't reason for concern in the future, just that it's all explainable and collegial and moving along in a positive way at the moment.
Right, and the concern is really internal for us to keep an eye on our metrics and make sure we're moving in the right direction. And we are focused on that.
Okay.
That will drive the right answers with the governing board.
Right.
Are there any other questions?
Hearing none, we will move to the next item on our agenda. Thank you, Charlie. That was a great report. Appreciate all the information as usual.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the next bullet point on our agenda is board membership, talking about increasing membership and the appointment of officers. I think I would let the governance committee speak on that when they do the committee reports. And so we'll move right along to the next bullet point, which is the facility update from Mr. Daniels. I'm gonna keep calling you Doctor though, because I'm gonna speak it to its existence. Doc.
Well, I'll keep taking it as long as you keep dishing it out. Kathy, do you want to start off with the facility update, and then I'll just fill in wherever you need me to?
Sure. So there was a number of things that prompted our discussion about the facility update, and one of them, I think Charlie just highlighted with regard to our enrollment. And we've consistently not met our enrollment targets, and we're going in the wrong direction with enrollment. And I think you can hear from Mr. Medley and Ms. Johnson, Dr. Jackson, Ms. Carter's reports. The school is doing amazing things with the children who attend, but we feel that the location is really a poor one. And for anyone who's been at the school, it doesn't take long to see that that's a concern. And then, we're doing work last year to prepare to become, performing visual arts school. And we don't even have a stage or an auditorium. We don't even have a gym really to speak of. And and then with the impact of COVID, the windows don't open, so fresh air became a challenge. We had to buy all these air filtration systems for every classroom. And then on top of that, we had this consistent roof leak over the past 2 years that the landlord continued to fix, but it didn't remediate the problem. And he was saying the problem was remediated and it was just getting worse. So we hired a contractor to come out and analyze it. And the report he gave was essentially, he gave the report a grade of an F. And it has significant structural issues that are frankly, a safety concern. And something needs to be done about it. So as it turns out, we got a price on that $500,000 to repair the roof. And then we came to find out that those who negotiated the lease prior to any of us being involved somehow incurred repairing roofs as a tenant obligation. And so now we're sitting here with need to repair a $500,000 roof in a building that really doesn't meet our needs, in a location that's negatively impacting our capacity to fill the school with students and to engage them in really meaningful instructional practices. So we're engaged right now in negotiations with the landlord and his attorney through our attorney around potentially seeing if we could get out of the lease significantly early without incurring a significant financial penalty in doing so because of the roof situation. So that's going to be kind of just a tricky legal dance that we're going to have to do. And then, but we have been working simultaneously through the Children's Guild with Cushman and Wakefield to identify properties that might meet our needs in the city. And so we had a number of meetings with them, and none of which yielded anything very meaningful. It was all a similar kind of industrial buildings that would need to be renovated and built to suit, but would likely take 2 years. And so that was of concern. And then on Friday, I was meeting with Brian and his team at the school, and Ms. Johnson shared, with me about, or with the team about, another pathway to go through this DC incubator space, which is designed to assist charter schools with locating facilities within the District of Columbia at a reasonable rate so that schools could be, start up without, incurring significant debt in a building. And some of those facilities are currently vacant, having already been renovated and situated in wards in which our children come from. So we are looking to gather information about their availability simultaneous to our conversations, parallel conversations with the attorneys related to being able to get out of the lease early. So that's kind of where we are. It's in progress. We do believe it's the right decision to make if we can navigate it. I don't know if there's any questions about that.
We sign a retainer or anything with Cushman and Wakefield, or they just?
We do as an organization. They're analyzing our whole portfolio because we have a number of properties in our portfolio, our real estate portfolio. And so we're just analyzing under Jenny Lavelli's new leadership. She's, kind of taking stock of everything we have. And so she's engaged Cushman CW in that process.
But I do know a company that has some pretty intimate knowledge of buildings available. This guy actually used to work with. He has his own real estate company, and he's definitely offered to help out in any way possible. But he was concerned that he'd do all the legwork and somebody else would swoop in.
Yeah, I think Jenny's, and Charlie, you can speak to that a little bit more. Engage with them on larger scope project already. So we were just leaning into them, and we have used others, similar to your colleague who are in the field, and the ones they brought forth really don't really meet our needs significantly better than than the position we're in. And honestly, Ms. Johnson's connection to the incubator project was probably the best outcome because they're actual school buildings and it's not, industrial space.
Right, and the reason I bring that up is, our agency, my agency, we maintain all the schools for the District of Columbia. So we have a very good knowledge of what schools are in the worst shapes and what schools are in not so bad shapes. They're going to be entering into the inventory for the DC incubator. That's kind of the angle I was coming from, kind of picking out a school before it even hits the market, so to speak.
That would be ideal, and there's nothing to preclude us from doing that in our engagement with CW, because like I said, that's a broader scope of work, and I would, have to speak to Jenny about it specifically, but we have talked to other, development companies, during this process, so we'd be very interested in having conversation, because honestly, I feel like we need to locate another space, if at least by the end of this school year.
I'll send the information out to
Dr.
you.
Seabrooks, you know that, when it comes to the District of Columbia, I mean, it's about who, what, and where, and your company and associates that have an inside track on information around available schools, because again, when we're dealing with some of these these larger real estate types of firms, it's about building space for them as opposed to school space, and having some information around, again, the quality of the building. It makes me think back 7 years where we just kind of let, because we needed something right now without doing good due diligence around finding out that backbone in the history of what's going on in this building. And I would venture to say that we didn't take a deep dive into the structural integrity of the building, but having somebody that actually has that information and that knowledge around these schools that are potentially going to end up in the incubator or that are already there would be a huge benefit to what it is that we're looking to do.
Yeah, I'll send the information on to Ms. Lane.
Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it. I think that's a good point related to, the board membership piece, like to have someone with your experience on the board, Marie's comments about the financials, those are really just really critical to, lending your support and helping us navigate some of these, areas that are, sometimes out of our realm as educators. But in a charter school, being your own LEA, you're responsible for everything. You're responsible for what, a superintendent of a public school system is responsible for, every single thing. Even if we're a school of one with 220 kids, we have to meet all those same expectations. We have to comply with all the same expectations. And so having a board who can kind of contribute where we're running into, because otherwise, like, it's literally like me going to be going out there with the DCO incubator and like looking for space. I'm a special educator by training. Like, I can navigate whatever worlds need to be navigated at this point in my career, but it's great to have the expertise on the board to help us, with different challenges that we face. Thank you.
I had a question. Is the goal to maintain one campus, or at some point are the grades, will there be different campuses for different grades? So is it long-term one building, or at some point is?
Well, honestly, if we were to, fill the school, yield productive outcomes for the children and meet our goals, then you would have something to market to the DC Charter Board to expand to another campus. At this point, we're under enrolled, and so the DC Charter Board wouldn't even entertain it, honestly.
Okay, I'm just thinking, I'm just trying to, when you're looking at spaces, just thinking about that piece of.
Yeah, for sure. You have to, and that makes it somewhat challenging to look into the future when, we don't have our feet under us fully yet. School's been open 5 years, a year and a half of it has been in a pandemic. And, the first years are always rocky in any new charter school. So we're kind of still in our infancy stage. So appreciate the support.
Just quick question, and apologize if you said this and I missed it, but when would our lease expire if we let it run its natural course?
I'm going to say we have like 15 years left on it minimum, Marie. Yeah. It was a horrible lease for us to engage in as a young charter school, to be honest. But it is what we inherited, so.
I think it's 2032 is the first, the next time we could look at an extension, so.
Thank you, Charlie.
No, thank you, Charlie.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for
So
Ms. Lane?
Just one more question. So I know our next meeting would be in December. Will you have any, I assume you'll be able to report out and give some additional insight on progress?
Yeah. I would hope we have some forward progress at that point, because ultimately we've got a roof situation that's going to need to be addressed. So if we're not going anywhere, we're going to have to take the tough conversation about how we afford to do that for the safety of our children and our staff.
So I think what I hear, at least at the moment, our options are negotiating optimistically, getting a better outcome, paying the $500,000 to fix the roof. And I guess I'm just kind of curious within our lease, do we have any ability to, what would the cost be to terminate early? And how does that relate to the other costs that we're considering? I'd just be kind of curious to hear a little bit more about the options at least we know we have on the table.
Yeah, we would definitely be able to have that. I don't have that figure yet. We're in the process. That will be a point of discussion here, I'm sure, before the December meeting. We'll be able to bring you an update on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Questions for Ms. Lane or Dr. Daniels? That stated, we will move to the next order of business, which is the lottery results and marketing and branding for recruitment window from Ms. Eastep.
Yeah, Ms. Eastep wasn't able to join us, and Mr. Turner is out on leave, so he wasn't able to join us either. But I believe Ms. Carter covered the enrollment report in the principal's report. Does anyone want to see it again? We can pull it up real quickly. But essentially, we came in at 220 students. Our enrollment target was 280 students. 108 of those students are students with disabilities. And 80 of them are categorized as level 4 students, the most restrictive special ed services. And the reason we point that out is that special students with disabilities, the payment structure, their per pupil expenditure is different than a traditional student. So generally speaking, we're somewhere around maybe $18,000 per pupil enrollment for a general ed student. And then students with disabilities that aren't, they're included in this larger enrollment count, but 80 of them being students with disabilities or that are level 4, those students per pupil rate is closer to $41,000 a student. So even though we come in somewhat under enrolled, you kind of can make some ground up financially by having students with such significant disabilities and their needs. So we'll be working on the budget based on this number. This is final as of today. Tomorrow is a freeze on the lottery. And then DC Public Charter Board will let us know what exactly our per pupil expenditure is. In other words, what our budget is for the year. And then, we'll revisit that with you. And then we jump right back into recruiting season, and the enrollment window opens up. Danielle's in November.
December.
Oh, re-enrollment and intensive re-enroll opens up in December. New enrollments can open up as early as January.
So we jump right back into the work of recruiting for next year. And as you can see from the numbers, you know, our elementary age is so small. We really need to do a better job of that. So Ms. Johnson came up with another really good strategy. We had approached it before with DC Charter Board. Having a preschool is a huge boon for your enrollment because the parents are desperate for preschool seats. They'll come in at preschool and sometimes bring siblings and they'll stay for a longer period of time. Because of our enrollment in our last review with DC Charter, we asked to have a preschool grade added and we were denied. They said until you kind of get your enrollment set. And we were like, well, this would help us set our enrollment, but I understand. But Ms. Johnson came up with the idea that there are approved preschool providers who don't have a facility that we may be able to partner with, and they would operate essentially their charter for preschool within our building since we have space. And then, you know, the families and the kids will like our program and they matriculate up. So that's a strategy we're going to be pursuing as well to help with our enrollment numbers for next year moving forward.
Any other questions? So the next order of business is getting an update on the Middle States accreditation process and the timeline.
I think we reported at the last several meetings that we were on track to for our site visit where they would review all our documentation, do a site visit to really assess if the reality of what we're saying on paper is, generally speaking, a practice in the building and the experience of our stakeholders. In other words, our family, our staff, our students. And so we were scheduled to do that October 23rd. And we've shared with this board before, this was kind of a historic opening to the school year on a number of counts, not least of which we'll share in the emergency legislation that's being proposed tomorrow by the DC Council. That, you know, with all the other opening requirements, we really kind of fell off our schedule a little bit and just felt like things are still so shaky with the pandemic, with quarantining, with staff being out, with kids having to be in virtual learning, with transportation, bus driver shortages, and just myriad other challenges that are outside the scope of a normal operating year. We asked, and we've decided to postpone our site visit till the first week in May, which is perfectly fine with the Middle States accreditation. It's, you know, we run this part of the process, and you can do it whenever you want. They don't have any criteria for the timing in which you do it. You tell them when you're ready, and then they come out and evaluate. So we've just decided to punt to the spring in hopes that things are getting closer back to normal in school operations, so they see the best that we do and not kind of the unsettled nature that is, you know, all schools right now during the pandemic. So we will continue to keep the board posted on this process, but right now we're scheduled for the first week in May for our Middle States accreditation site visit.
I'm just curious, will the issues with our roof impact that site visit?
I beg your pardon, Marie?
The roof issues you mentioned, will they have an impact? Is that part of the considerations for the
No,
site
it's
visit?
they're more assessing your instructional program,
Okay.
your culture, climate, academic performance, those kinds
So
of
as long
things.
as it's not dripping down that day? we're good?
Yeah, hope it's not a rainy day. I think May we should be okay.
Okay. Doesn't May come in like online? No, then April. April comes in like online. Okay. We'll see. All right. Thank you, Ms. Lane. Any other questions on the Middle States accreditation process? If not, the next order of business is to get into our committee reports. And we're going to start with the governance committee. I know Mr. Karan is not here today. Is Mr. Wong here? Is he going to provide an update? Yes. Mr. Wong?
I am here. Sorry about the background noise. I do not have an update. Marie, did you have anything?
So the only thing that I had noticed that Michael had shared just in way of follow-up in mentioning he wasn't going to be here tonight is that he is looking to make sure that we convene a meeting soon of the governance committee. And then we refocus our efforts on the board recruitment as well as ensuring that we're recruiting not just for board members, but also for those officer positions. He did mention, and I don't know, Rob, if he mentioned this to you, this is Michael, that he is looking to consider bringing in some outside help for that recruitment process. I'm not sure, what his thoughts are there, but we're looking forward to kind of learning a little bit more about that when we do meet as a committee. And I'll make sure, I think generally you've been invited to those meetings. So I think that's one that we would really value you attending as well, and make sure that your perspective is being a part of the discussion up front. But with that, I guess maybe, Angela, maybe we should just sort of call out to the group and sort of highlight that we are looking for board members, not just anyone to add to the ranks, but those individuals who can contribute in a meaningful way to the conversations that we're having at the meetings, people who will be committed to having high board attendance and participation, but also within this group and of those that we would be bringing on, individuals who are interested in acting as more than a typical board member, but taking on one of those officer positions. So kind of a call to action there on multiple levels. So if anyone knows of anyone to recommend, and if you could, kind of have an active lookout. I know we often aren't out meeting and greeting people in person, but as you're on your Teams meetings or working within your networks, as you identify or think of someone that would be a great person to have sitting beside us, at least virtually in these meetings, please bring them forward. Bringing recommending someone forward is just a step in the process. It doesn't necessarily commit anyone to doing anything. So we do appreciate everyone's participation in that process. Angelo, I don't know if there's anything else you would add to that.
No, I definitely echo everything you just said. Any help is better than none. So if you know someone who is interested, if you'd like any type of role, or if there's anything that you'd like to contribute in that fashion, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you. We will go to the Marketing and Enrollment, Finance and Facilities Committee. If Ms. Hussain is here.
Yes, so
Okay.
Nothing to report other than we need more members on the committee. So as new board members are recruited, to keep that in mind, yes.
Are you still a one-person shop pretty much? Or do you have, yeah.
Yes.
We got to get her some help, y'all.
Yes.
For sure. All right. We'll go to the Parent Engagement, Academic Excellence Compliance Committee. I saw Seema was here earlier. I don't know if she's still here now. I thought they were trying to add an announcement about having a co-chair.
Ms. Tyler,
Hello, this is Seema. Good evening, everyone. So in terms of an update, we were able to add a co-chair, Melody Giles, and we motioned to approve it. I think we still need to hold a meeting to finalize it, but we did it electronically. In terms of our upcoming activities, we're continuing to refine. We've drafted a concept note for our committee to think about a communications action plan. And at one point we were exploring a family engagement platform called Flamboyant, but not exactly sure where it stands, but I know that that was something that was under exploration. And then we were hoping to add a component there that would engage both parents and teachers. So that would be one additional component, but we can hopefully get a better update at the next meeting.
That's very exciting. And this is going to help, I guess, parents communicate with the teachers, kind of like, and I'm just, because I have no idea what it is, but I'm thinking like a group chat type thing, but on some other flamboyant platform, perhaps. Is that what that idea is?
Right, exactly. Yeah, some type of interface that would facilitate better communication between teachers and parents, but also then among parents as well. So I think it's used at other schools. I'm not sure which schools in DC are using it, but I believe some other schools are using it, but I don't believe it's been pursued or adopted here.
All right, any other questions for Seema?
So Flamboyant is a program that you actually you have to get admitted to. I actually applied, I think it may have been 3 years ago or 2 years ago, made it to the final cut, but just wasn't a school that was actually selected. And then of course, you know, we got hit with the whole COVID thing. So, you know, again, once we stabilize, it is something that we may, you know, resubmit to participate again. You know, again, but for them to even qualify for a potential entry, that there has to be stabilization. So we have to have a stable environment. We have to have a stable population and community of students and parent backing that is going to allow them to really do what it is that they do at a high level. So I kind of feel like we're going to have to tier some of these other things before we can get to the flamboyant level of where they, you know, they bring on new partners.
That's very helpful, and I can bring that back to the other committee members because there might be alternate platforms that might work better, at least in the interim.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. We'll move to the next order of business, which is other business. I have none other than what I spoke about earlier. If there's, so we'll just make this an open call for anybody's other issues or business concerns that they want to bring, please bring them forward now.
I would just, I just wanted to share, as I mentioned earlier, that tomorrow the DC City Council is poised to affect emergency legislation that, in short, reverses the mayor's position that no schools in the District of Columbia will offer virtual learning or distance learning in any capacity. And so she issued that executive order in the summertime to create, you know, an expectation that all children return to school. That was not the outcome of the executive order, and DC public schools, DC charter schools are missing large swaths of students whose parents are choosing not to send them to school for fear, for health and safety reasons. And so Councilmember Mendelson led the charge and has currently 8 votes to pass emergency legislation tomorrow, needing 9 votes, which in effect would broaden families' capacities to access distance learning and virtual learning. While very well intended and definitely will meet the needs of many more children and families, the burden falls solely on the schools and will come at a great price to instructional service delivery and staffing, honestly, especially when this is occurring in parallel to the mayor's order to have all school staff vaccinated by 11/1 without the opportunity for testing. So in other words, on November 1st, whichever of our staff have not gotten a vaccine will be terminated. So there's kind of a collision of potential impact at not only our school, but all schools across the district. If you have significant numbers of your faculty who are either not willing or not able to get vaccinated, we lose them. And at the same time, this legislation, which is highly likely to pass tomorrow, will require schools to figure out a way to deliver face-to-face instruction to the majority of their students, and also meet the instructional needs in a digital platform for those who are at home for medical reasons. Whether that's themselves as a child is immunocompromised, or a family member in the household is immunocompromised or has some other health condition of a significant nature that would make them at high risk for the disease. So, we're just really, this all kind of came to pass on Friday over the weekend and today, and we'll go before the council tomorrow. But it will have a significant impact on instructional service delivery at our school, were it to pass tomorrow, which is what we expect to happen. So just another challenge in the year-and-a-half pandemic challenge that we faced.
Glad you mentioned it. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just curious, Kathy, when you're talking about the requirement to be vaccinated as well as the potential employment liability that goes along sort of with that tracking and gathering information and firing individuals potentially, does that responsibility rest with the DC government, or does that burden or liability lie with us?
We have to enforce the mayor's order. So as the employer, we need to assure that we've validated that all our staff are vaccinated, and if not, they're not eligible to work in a public school in the District of Columbia.
And I assume we have a good process that we put in place, something electronic to try to track and validate.
We do, and we've had it in place for quite some time. Right now, Bryan School is sitting at 50% of their staff have uploaded their vaccine cards. Brian believes, a much higher number are vaccinated or going to get vaccinated in order to keep their job. So he's going to spend a good portion of, the next week, 2 weeks, not only encouraging those who are not yet vaccinated to do so, but those who are to upload their vaccine cards.
But have we consulted with legal counsel just to understand the exposure that we have for litigation and how we might react, or to make sure that we've been thoughtful about how we've communicated?
We just recently issued our organization-wide policy and SOP on vaccinations. And as a larger organization, we're going to require vaccines and make testing optional. So all of our sites will have an on-site testing once a week, and they'll do 10% of all staff and families can opt in to have their child screened on a weekly basis as well. And the van will come to the school property and do the screening and report the results to the school. And so as an organization, we're doing that, but by law, we had to include a specific section on the DC law that requires peer vaccinations without the opportunity to test. That said, we are offering testing at the school anyway, just to prevent spread. Any other questions? Just really keeping you informed, because it's just another challenge that the school team is having to face, and teachers will bear a great burden for this type of instructional delivery model.
And to piggyback off of what Ms. Lane has stated, I know that the council is having some pretty interesting hearings coming up in the month of October. I think October 20th is universal Wi-Fi hearing. It's not necessarily specific to education, but a hearing on trying to get, universal Wi-Fi throughout the city. And then there's also one on education governance, I think that same week or the week after. So those could be some interesting hearings to kind of participate in if need be.
Yeah, and we're a member, just for your information, of the DC Charter Alliance, and they're our legislative advocacy group. So they stay very well in tune with all of the legislation that's moving forward through the council and the DC Charter Board and DC Public Schools as well, OSSI, because all of those agencies, when they make a decision, they have an impact on our school. And so they've been tremendous at keeping us informed. They lobby and advocate for us, and gather our voices, give us opportunities to weigh in, and pathways to share with each of those agencies what our perspectives are. So they've been enormously helpful, and we'll try to keep this board informed as well when there's impactful legislation occurring.
Anyone else have any other business they would like to raise? If not, we will call this meeting to adjourn. It is now 7:42 p.m., October 4th, 2021. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being on time.